Hi everybody, it's Maureen Wong for Your Next Stamp. Today I have this card for you and it uses the medium pull tab tearaway tab die and also some other products for Your Next Stamp which I'll get into during the video. But there's a little surprise when you pull the tab. There's confetti inside. So that's a fun little surprise for your recipient. And then I've also stamped little happy faces underneath the tab because the card says, "You make me so happy," for the frog. So this is the card for today, and let's get started. Okay, I have my Misty stamp tool out, and I'm going to use it for this little tip/trick, I guess, that I came up with. I have a scrap piece of cardstock and I'm going to wedge it into that corner right there. And now I have a frog from the Smiley Happy Critter Crew set 1, and that's from Your Next Stamp. And I am going to, wait, before I place it down, I noticed it is a cling mount stamp, so for my Misty I have to remove the foam pad underneath it, and actually I don't need all that scratch paper. I just need to stamp on my one little piece of cardstock. I lined up my stamp where I want it to go and I closed the cover. Now regarding Memento versus VersaFine, I actually prefer the VersaFine ink, but it doesn't stamp well with, or it doesn't work well with Copics. Memento is one of the preferred stamp inks for Copics. But you can do this where you stamp in Memento first and then stamp over it with VersaFine after you color it with your Copics, and you get a much nicer image, in my opinion. So that's what I'm going to do here. And the reason you can do that is with the Misty stamp tool, it will stamp in exactly the same place the second time when you overstamp it with the VersaFine ink. And you'll see in my video that I'm actually going to stamp it several times to get the even coverage because its mouth is a very solid black. So to get that, I'm going to need to stamp it a couple times. Here I'm inking up my stamp with the Memento ink and closing the cover to stamp my frog. And he came out pretty well, but his mouth is a little splotchy. You can see here in the close-up. But that's fine. And actually, I'm going to start coloring here, but I was all out of frames, so I had to cut another one and start all over again. Here I am with G40, and I'm going all over the whole frog except for the eyeballs, the crown, and the tummy. And this is just to lay down a fast base coat to help the other colors blend. Then I'm going to come in with my G43 and I'm going to add in some shadowing around the sides of the frog, places where there are body parts in front of other body parts, things like that. And then I'm going to come back in with the G40 and blend that out. And then I'm going to not do the dots right now with my G46 because if I do wet on wet, it does tend to bleed. So I'm going to let that dry for a little while and instead do his tongue with R81. And then I'm going to get out my Wink of Stella in gold to do his crown. And I could color that in with Copics, but I just really love the look of the Wink of Stella, the glittery look. I think it's fitting for a crown. And now at this point, I think he's dry enough so that I'm going to come back in with my G46 and color in his spots. And that is basically it for now for coloring. And what we're going to do is get back out our Misty so that I can overstamp him with the VersaFine. But first I need to clean off my stamp, which I should have done before so that it would be dry and ready for me, but of course I forgot. So just a quick clean and dry it off with my hands to make sure that the ink isn't going to get diluted. Then I'm going to stamp with my VersaFine. I'm trying to make sure I get really good coverage on that stamp, but even though I did get good coverage, I think my ink pad needs to be re-inked because it left a little bit of a splotchy area on the side of his mouth, so I'm going to go in and stamp that again. But even with the second stamping, you still see a gap. So I'm going to come in a third time, and it's just because I can with the Misty. And I'm going to press down really firmly. Now he didn't come out absolutely perfect, but you'll see that he came out pretty good, and that's a nice black for his mouth. So I'm going back to my Misty here and prepping it to stamp with my clear stamps now, so I need to put my foam pad back in, and I like to have a little bit of scratch paper on it, but I changed my mind and decided to use pink scratch paper instead, so you can see my 2 pieces of white cardstock on there, and I'm lining those up against the edge. And I'm using my ruler here. If I keep it straight against the top, it'll run straight down the middle of the Misty, and then I'm lining up my tearaway tab die where I want it to cut, and I'm butting it up against the ruler to make sure that it's straight. I'm going to take a pencil and draw 2 light lines on the side, and that's going to show me where to stamp. And then I'm going to move up my bottom piece of cardstock, always keeping it flush to the side, so that I know where I want my die to cut, and then I'm going to tape it down and die cut that with my machine. And I just want to point out that you don't have to use a piece of cardstock that's as big as the die, because here I haven't. And you can see the cut lines that it makes and the little finger opening to get your nail underneath there. So now I'm going to go ahead and stamp, and first of all I'm using the pull tab sentiment set, and I'm going to try and use the arrow and the lift here sentiment. I'll wedge the cardstock into that bottom corner and put the lift here sentiment down, and it turns out that I cannot fit my arrow in, so I'm just going to center the lift here, or not really center, but put it a little bit more towards the center. So I've gone ahead already and picked up my sentiment with the cover of the Misty. Now I'm inking it up with my VersaFine and stamping it down. And now I want to do a sentiment, so I'm going to have to clean off my lift here and take it off of my Misty. And I'm using the Love and Smile set from Your Next Stamp, specifically the You Make Me So Happy sentiment, which not only goes along with the bunny in the Love and Smile set, but also fits my frog very nicely for today's card. Now I'm using the grid lines on the cover to see if my sentiment is straight, and I adjusted it a little bit, and now I think it's straight, so I'm going to ink it up and stamp it. And that looks good to me, so that is all done for that part. Now I'm going to stamp my happy faces, but first I need to mark where the edge of the lift here of the tearaway tab is, so that I don't stamp past that portion because it will show. And I want to center this happy face from the pull tab sentiments in between those 2 lines. I'm sorry you can't see it very well in this video, but I'm trying not to go below the line that I drew to show where the end of the pull tab was, and I'm also trying to keep it between those 2 lines I drew earlier around the tab die. I'm inking this up with bubblegum ink from Amuse Studio and stamping it down, and it doesn't stamp very nicely the first time. So just because I can, I'm going to stamp it again with my Misty, and that came out much better. And now I'm going to look at it and eyeball it. I'm going to keep that edge lined up with the edge of the Misty and see where I want my stamp to end up. And I'm not closing it all the way down. I'm just closing it enough so I can see where the stamp is going to end up, and that's why you see my big head in the way there, because I'm trying to check for the position of the next face. And there we go, and the 3 faces are stamped down, and now we're done. I'm not going to stamp over the top because I'm going to have adhesive there. Last thing I want to do though is erase the bottom line, because that is going to show when the pull tab is opened. And that's all for my Misty. Now I need to assemble my card, and you can see how the happy faces will line up behind the pull tab. I'm going to put my adhesive all over the pull tab side, or the back of the pull tab piece, and now I've got some confetti that I made with another Your Next Stamp product, the heart confetti I mean. And I used the Takeout Box Hearts add-on set. Just that one die, one pass through makes all those little hearts. And then I added in some little sequins. And I'm going to put those right behind the tear tab. Trying not to get them onto the adhesive or outside of the tab, so that when the tab is open that it'll all fall out. So just carefully position that all inside, and then make sure you line up your happy faces where they're going to come out underneath the tab, and then line up the two pieces, which will line up exactly because they were cut with the same die. Press down very firmly to make sure that your sequins and confetti are stuck in there really well. Now I'm going to take my frog, I think he's dry, and I'm going to take the matching die from the Smiley Happy Critter Crew set 1, line that up, tape it down, and run it through my die cut machine. And there is my little frog, all die cut out. And now what I'm going to do is put some foam tape on the back of him to mount him on my piece. But before I put him on the piece, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling my card. I used the Peekaboo Door set again, the large scallop piece, to make a pattern paper panel for my pull tab section to go on. And I'm just using my ATG to glue that down. And then I have a card base here that's an A2 size card base, and I'm using my ATG again to adhere that whole piece to my card base. And then finally I'm going to mount my frog right over that sentiment, "You make me so happy." And there is the finished card. Okay, and you can see I did it a little bit differently this time. I put it with the opening at the bottom instead of at the top. So let me just show you again. When your recipient opens the tearaway tab die, you get confetti and the happy faces inside. So I hope you like this project, and I hope we'll see you over at yournextstamp.com for all of these products and many more. Thank you very much for watching.